Hello, everybody. This is Justin Case of American NewsCape, joining our friend, or rejoining our friend, Janice Lynn. And Janice, we've missed you. So, hello, Janice. Welcome back to
Hello.
American NewsCape. Janice,
I see that.
we've been trying to do this for a couple years now, and you've been a busy lady, and that's good. You've been doing lots of pretty cool things. So, Janice, where have you been, and what's been happening in your world?
So I was very privileged to get to go to the 80th anniversary of D-Day and to the celebrations. I was a medical staff volunteer, and so I got to do some pretty amazing things with my volunteers, with my veterans while we were there, and the other volunteers too. So.
Well, that's cool, Janice. And these are basically D-Day veterans, gentlemen that were involved in D-Day one way or another. Some of them on the beach, some of them in the air. And our audience loves those people, and we remember those we've lost. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you took with you?
Right. So, sort of the background of what happened was last year there was a group in it's actually out of Huntsville, Alabama, called Honor and Veteran Legacies. And sort of last minute, the medical volunteer that they had was unable to go, and someone knew of me and my love and passion for quilts of valor, and so they told some people there that, hey, I know somebody who will volunteer to go even last minute, and so they contacted me. And I was like, absolutely, I would love to. I just got to talk to my husband and talk to my boss and make sure everything will work out on that end of it. But everything fell into place, and I was able to go to the 79th and got to volunteer as the medical staff to travel from Huntsville to Normandy. We had a layover in Atlanta and then in Paris, and then we took vans over from Paris to Normandy. And so that trip was amazing and fabulous, and I was very fortunate and got asked to go back again this year. And so I got to go back for the 80th. And so last year I accompanied 4 veterans, and this year with the groups that we met up with there, I ended up with 7 veterans. So it was a very amazing experience. So I actually have little cards here, so I'll kind of tell you about each one of my guys here. So this gentleman here is Howard Polin, and let me see if I can get that where you can see it and stuff. And Howard he enlisted in 1942 in the Army Reserves. And so he did serve in France and in Germany. So he was 100 years old. So on this trip, so his 2 sons got to go with him. But he was the oldest veteran who went, and it was pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. Thank you, Howard, for all you've done. And
Absolutely. So the next gentleman who went with me was Alan, and Alan was a lot of fun. And he was actually a pilot. And so his dream while we were there, he's 99 years old. He likes to tell that he just retired a year ago at 98 years old. And so he worked up until literally just a year ago. And but he was a pilot and served. And he was really amazing because he had lots of pictures that he had taken during the time that he served. And so we got to look at a lot of his pictures that were actually his personal photos that he took from the plane, and they were amazing. But so he was 99 years old on this trip, and his dream was to get to go back up and to fly over Normandy. And the group that Honor and Veteran Legacy partners with, which is a French group called Veterans Back to Normandy, actually arranged to make that happen. And it kind of grew from just Alan going up to quite a few of our group getting to go up in C-47s and flying over the beaches of Normandy. And I got to do that. So that was very, very, very amazing. And the pilot let Alan go and sit in the cockpit, and he was so enthused and so with it that he ended up letting Alan fly the plane for a little bit. So at 99 years old, he got to fly C-47 over Normandy for just a little bit and stuff to log some flight time. And so he was like a kid on Christmas morning that he got to do that again at this point in his life. amazing, amazing, amazing. I've told several people if I had just got to see him get off this plane, everything would have been worth it as far as the trip and going over there. Just, it was amazing just to see him and stuff as excited as he was. So.
Well, Alan, we thank you and for everything you did, and thank you for making that a remarkable trip. And it was really well deserved, Alan.
Yeah, yeah. So my next gentleman is Mr. Warren Goss, and he was drafted at age 18, and he actually he was with the 531st that landed on Utah Beach in the first wave on D-Day. So he actually was there, and so that's pretty amazing. Just all the things that he saw, all the things that he lived through, and and got to share with our group, and then with the French people and the French children and stuff, because our veterans do go into schools. Most mornings they're going to go into the schools and they're going to talk to children and continue to pass on this history to future generations. So that was Warren.
Thanks, Warren.
And then I have Mr. John Carroll, and John is he was I want to make sure I tell this correctly and stuff. I'm afraid to say this. So he enlisted and he served in Germany and stuff during his military service and stuff. Part of this is in French on the back of these cards when I start trying to read it. And I'm like, ooh. I was late. I'm like, uh-oh. And stuff on it. John was really fun too. We did but one of the things that we did was we went to this beautiful church, and they did a show and sang for our veterans and for different community members and stuff that came there. And after it was over, John asked if he could sing. And so he went up front and got his guitar, and he sang Amazing Grace. And so just like the whole church was just in tears. And so it was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. So.
Well, thank you, John.
And then I have this was a gentleman is Rondo, and Rondo was a Higgins boat driver, and he had served in the Pacific War. And Rondo was lots of fun as well. He had countless energy. His and Alan's energy just amazed me the whole trip, because they were ready to go at everything and just really had a great time. So it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And then the next two gentlemen were actually on my trip last year as well. So I know them the best because this was my second year with them. And I have Arthur Hullett, who is from Huntsville. So I actually flew with Arthur and the next gentleman all the way from Huntsville all the way to France. So they were on the plane with me. And Arthur and Howard actually was too. But so Arthur was drafted, and he was a quartermaster, and he served in Germany. So he was not there in France for D-Day, but he did serve and stuff there. And then Arthur actually served later too in the Korean War as well. So he actually did serve in two different wars. So.
Well, thank you, Arthur.
And then I have Mr. Ottis Branon, and as I say, he was actually on my trip last year as well. And Ottis is a great gentleman too. He also was a Higgins boat driver and loves to talk, and it's just lots of fun. The stories that these guys have to tell just are really very heartwarming and very awe-inspiring, because they're just heroes, all of them, and every one of them's stories are like, wow, that should be a movie, or that should be a book, or that should be, because they just tell such amazing things on the different things that not necessarily are things that are in the history books, but just each individual person's story of what they saw and what they did, and how they interacted with the French people, or their brothers in arms and that type of thing. So it was really a lot of fun and stuff on it. So
people need to keep in perspective, these were all very, very young men.
Yes, they were.
Going on a duty that they did not expect to survive from.
Right. No, it's really amazing to me when I look over the history of it as I'm learning more and more. But the youngest recorded person that they know of lied about his age, and was 12 years old when he enlisted. And I'm thinking, 12 years old? That's a baby. Even the 18-year-olds are babies, but it's just like, wow. I just can't imagine now a 12-year-old being to where they wanted to serve and go fight and defend their country that much. And I'm sure they're out there, but it just boggles my mind that there were so many who were doing their best to get there, to help, to serve, and to try to make the world a better place.
Well, I don't mean this disparaging to the younger generations today, but back then, a 12-year-old had to have a greater edge. I mean, even when I went to school, we fought through school, and it was kind of what was expected. When I got to high school, I didn't have to register for the draft because they just ended it, and it disappointed me.
Right. Yeah. Which is like, oh, so.
But grew up with that. Grew up with veterans. My father. I'll just mention him briefly. He got through boot in 1942, and they asked, "Is anybody in this group at I think it was Fort Benning? Can anybody type?" And he could, and he was assigned to MacArthur's headquarters.
Oh wow! Wow! Yeah.
So he has unique stories from that period of time that would have made a movie. And but what's really cool about this, Janice, is what you do in your perspective of it. That would make a movie onto itself. And
it's pretty amazing.
And I hope, because I know you, that you're planning a book about this.
So, of course, I write romance. I write for Harlequin, and have wrote for Hallmark, and I'm writing for Thule Publishing. And so I did draw upon this to write a medical romance for Harlequin. It actually comes out in August, but there were no romances that I'm aware of on any of their trips. So if there were, then I was oblivious to it if there was. So that's
Well, I'm sure all your veterans loved you if that was a sense of romance. And gosh,
I love them. So
yeah, exactly, and we do too. What a great honor for us to have you share this with us, and just a glimpse into their histories and their reaction. I would guess when they come together as a group, they are a band of brothers.
Oh, absolutely. It's really interesting at the beginning of the trips. They're a little bit quieter, and then the more time they spend together, the more they're talking about these things. You just watch how much easier it gets for them to start telling their stories and to telling about the things. And and as I said, we go into the schools, and so the French people really promote this history, and they really promote the truth of the American soldier is why that they have their freedom, and it's really all inspiring to see how the American soldier is so loved there by every age group, and so even small children are coming up to our veterans, and they are loving on them and wanting to take selfies with them and wanting to get their autograph on these little cards. Those little cards are what the veterans hand out when they meet people. That kind of tells their story and those type of things. But those kids want to get these autographed by them. They're all asking if they can have them autographed, and they prize them. It's not like they just want to talk. They prize these things that they got to meet a World War II veteran. And so as they're interacting with this, you just watch them come more and more and more out of their shell and start talking more and more freely about the things that happened. And one of my veterans had said that, and he was one of the ones who went last year, he had nightmares and stuff, and that while he's there, he does not have nightmares. And it's just, it's very healing for them, I think, and to be there and to talk about it. But then to see the effects of what they did and the sacrifices they were made, and that the French people are free and have been since that time. When after D-Day and the French people were freed, they've had freedom ever since. And so, they've had 80 years now of freedom and peace, to where they are so thankful to the American soldier for that. And they continue to honor that memory and to remember our soldiers. An example of that would be Magnaville. which is this year was the first time I went there. But there were 2 planes that crashed there. So there was actually no battle that took place in that little village. But on June 6th and on June 10th, there were planes that crashed there, and every person on the planes were killed. Every single year since, they have had a ceremony, and they read out every single person on those planes' names, and they lay flowers on a memorial that has those people on those planes, their names listed out. And so, just those type of things are so common that they do that, and they continue to honor each person who is there and each person who has died there. They're so appreciative of that. And I think as Americans, where we've had our freedom and not lived through that sometimes we take our freedom for granted a little bit more and stuff because we have had it. And they just are so appreciative of it. It blows me away when I think about how loving and how thankful and how grateful that they are. It's one of the first things that struck me last year.
Well, during that period, their great grandparents were surviving, and
Yes.
there was a
Yes.
there was a huge mortality rate of civilians. And
Absolutely.
when the Canadians and the Americans and the Poles and the Australians and the British landed on those beaches,
Yes.
that was the hope. That was the hope, and that was the beginning of their survival. And they remember.
Absolutely. Yeah,
S-
absolutely. There's so children during that time frame. Of course, there's a lot of them that are still alive and still very vocal about the things that they saw. One of the veterans with Veterans Back to Normandy was telling me that his father lived right down from Utah Beach, and that morning he woke up, and when he looked out, he said, "You didn't see water; you just saw boats." And he said, and I asked him, I said, was he afraid? And he said, no, he was so glad. He was like, finally, they're here. They're going to help us. And so, he looked at it as a moment of hope and was so glad of the things that were going to take place. So, because I keep thinking, how would I have felt if I had woke up and saw that? And I think I would have been scared. But they said, no, he was so glad and happy that was what was happening.
Well, a good friend of mine who's passed, and his father was in the Navy, and his father was stationed at Pearl Harbor when he was a child. And he relayed the story to me that he and a friend of his were outside playing when Pearl Harbor began, and they could see what was going on. And I said, well, how did you react to that? He said, we were 4 years old. So their innocence was preserved by that, but I'm sure it had a big impact on them going
Right, absolutely.
through with life. So, all Americans, we've been touched by this. I mean, we've been touched by it one way or another. Even if you're a new citizen to this country, I will honor them and keep them in my hearts till the day I pass because they deserve nothing less.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Janice, thank you for doing this and thank you for sharing this remarkable story. I could keep you here all day, but before you go, touch on the quilts and the quilt
Mhm.
program because that's another remarkable thing you happen to be involved in.
Right. Well, the Quilts of Valor is what really, kind of paved the road for me getting involved with honoring veteran legacies and Veterans Back to Normandy, because it was because of people involved with VMU. I was involved with Quilts of Valor, and that's what pulled me in. So Quilts of Valor is a foundation who their idea is to help to heal veterans and to welcome them home. And so Catherine Roberts had a vision to where she, a dejected soldier had a quilt wrapped around them and had a sense of healing and feeling better. And I always compare it to when you're sick or you want to wrap up in a blanket and you want to feel better and you do. It's just a comfort there to be wrapped up. And so, Quilts of Valor is patriotic quilts. I actually have one behind me and stuff that will be presented to someone. And the they are awarded to veterans, and during that presentation, they are wrapped up and they are welcomed home. And it is an amazing, amazing organization. You don't have to be a quilter to get involved. There's lots of needs, lots of different things that they do to help. Help honor and heal and welcome our veterans home. And it's Quilts of Valor Foundation, QOVF.org is their website if someone wanted to go and to read more and to find out more. Or if you have or know of a veteran who has not been awarded a Quilt of Valor, there is a place there where you can actually nominate a veteran to be awarded a Quilt of Valor. One of my 7 had not had a Quilt of Valor yet, and I am working on getting that to happen because, that's our World War II veterans all need to be wrapped up. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we did an interview on this probably 4 years ago, and I'll put a link to that in this Read More, and we'll also put a link to Quilts of Valor, and we'll put a link to this other organization, Janice.
Yes, please do, because they honoring veteran legacies does a lot of really great things for the veterans in the Huntsville, northern Alabama area there. Like even things like helping to get their veterans to the meetings, providing transportations. I've heard a few like were saying that they were helping with a doctor's appointments and that type of thing when there was a need. And 2 of the volunteers that went with us, we got back late Wednesday night of June the 12th, and they got up the next morning and they took off to Washington, D.C. for a ceremony for another veteran at Arlington Cemetery. So these are people who truly love our country and are constantly just giving back. So, and I said 2 actually drove, 2 actually flew. So that's so that we're on this trip. They got back the night before, and I was just like, so I know that how dedicated they were because of how much of their time that they were dedicating to this.
Well, I'm sure your husband would love to accompany you on one of these trips, and I'm rooting for him to be able to.
I am on call 24/7, and so it's amazing, and the things I get to do with the veterans is absolutely amazing. But ultimately, I never lose sight of why I'm there, and my job is to help take care of them. And as much as I love my husband, I'm not sure I want to bring him on one of these trips. I would love to bring him to Normandy, France, but I want to be able to focus on my veterans when I'm there. So I'm not sure I can have one of these.
That's fine, Janice. Maybe he could go with a friend. Maybe he could go with me. Maybe I could go with him and keep him away from you. All righty.
Wonderful to see. I will say that anybody who has the opportunity to go to Normandy, France during the month of June, where they're having all the D-Day remembrances of the different events that happen there, they should. It renews your patriotism, your faith in people. There's so much love and gratitude and appreciation that I truly just feel better about the world when I'm there.
Well, and we all should. And there are a lot of remarkable people, wonderful people in the world, and we need to not focus on all the bozos. And I don't mean to offend cartoon clowns, but we need to do better. All right, Janice. We love you. Our audience loves you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, we'll promise to come back and we'll catch you again real soon.
Absolutely.
All right.